Hello artists, welcome to your pink and purple with trees painting class. In front of you, you should have your canvas long ways like so. Be sure you have a cup of water, some napkins, a large brush, and a small brush. For your colors, you should have purple, red, and yellow, and then black and white. You do not need to pour out your colors onto your wax paper, but later on when we mix, you definitely should. If you do not have all those materials, not a problem. You're welcome to push pause at any time and come back to us whenever you're ready. The first thing we're going to have everyone do is dip both of their brushes in their cup of water and just kind of swirl them around, get them nice and neat for our painting class. And then just gently tap them on your paper towel. You never want to go straight from water to painting on your canvases or your paint will drip. So always be sure to wash and then dry a little. On our canvas for the first step, we are going to split our canvas in half from side to side. I'm going to grab my big brush and I'm going to dip a little bit of yellow and a little bit of white, pretty much half and half. Be sure your paint isn't dripping off your brush. You can always wipe off the sides. I can always use my fingers to kind of check it. Make sure it's about in the middle. There you go. Make sure everything looks nice and smooth. You don't want any bumpy lines. Just a nice light yellow. And then go ahead and bring the light yellow onto the right side. You don't have to worry about the left, but just the right side. Perfect. Once you are done making your light yellow lines, splitting your canvas in half, the next thing you're going to do is kind of make a pointy C shape. I guess that's a good way of describing it. Let me show you how, and then whenever you're ready, you can just kind of jump in. I'll go back to a little bit more yellow and white on my brush. Again, this is going to make a nice light yellow. I'm going to find the center of this line. And I'm going to find the center of this top half so I can even mark it. So here to here, I'm going to have the two meet. And I'm going to go from here to the middle of this half. And I can just start up here again and have this meet. Make sure that line is curvy. And whenever you're done, you can go back to more white and a tiny bit of yellow. So more white and a little bit of yellow. And you're going to paint this top half with nice long smooth lines going off the edge and then coming back and touching the line. So I'm just kind of getting smaller and smaller. You can go over your line work a little bit too so it doesn't look so harsh. Then I'll do the same thing on the bottom part. More white, a little bit of yellow. Kind of getting from my large and getting smaller and smaller as I come in. Getting everything nice and smooth. Go over that harsh outline that we just made to kind of soften it up. Make sure it's a nice, very light yellow. You can even bring that yellow off to the side. So the top of this area, I'm just going to curve over. And then this area down here, I'm going to curve over. You can just kind of paint side to side. Once you're done with your yellow and white, just wipe your big brush off onto your paper towel. It's okay if you still have some yellow and white on there, but I do want you to go back for a little bit more white and just white. Tap some off on your paper towel, and then just add a little bit of white, just kind of sweeps on the top part. Just adding a little bit of light on top. So white, maybe tap some off on your paper towel. Just kind of go over it with some sweeps of white to have your lightest point. Nice light. Once you're done, you do not have to wash your brush. You can just wipe some of it off on your paper towel. The next step, with my big brush that still has a little bit of yellow and white on it, I'm going to go into half white and half red. So a good amount of both, so white and red. I'm going to come out a little bit further, almost splitting this area in half. Just going to just make a point right here and a point down there. And I'm going to curve off and up. Again, kind of splitting this area in two. So that line right there. I'm going to meet between these 2 points. So between this line in the middle, and then between the outer kind of area of the yellow and the point of your canvas. This is all done with a little bit of red and white, and you can even overlap over that line now and have your red and white meet. You can even bring that red and white line over to the sides as well. Perfect. And then I'm going to go back to just more white because a little bit of red goes really far. So I'm going to go back to more white. And I'm going to fill in all the space right here. I'm going to go back over my line so I can kind of lighten it a little bit. I'll even overlap over that yellow line as well. A nice, really light pink. And it's okay if you get some yellow on your brush. Go all the way to that yellow. Again, go over your line just to kind of make it a little bit less harsh. And same with down here. You can also curve this over as well. So I'm going to go back to my white and overlap over my red. And again, it is okay if it's catching some yellow because that yellow and that red are working together. Can go over my yellow line as well. If you feel like it did get too yellow, you can always let it dry and then go back over it with some red and white. Going all the way up to my yellow, going over that harsh line that we made earlier, carrying it over to the side. Excuse me. With kind of like whatever's on my brush. So I just have a little bit of red and white. If you still have a lot on there, just pat some off. I just have a little bit of red and white and some of the yellow that catched on my brush. But I'm going to come in a little bit on my yellow and sweep some red and white in. So I'm just going to overlap, coming in a little bit. Mine is pretty dry, so I'm going to go back with red and white. Just a little bit. Tap some off of my paper towel so I know it's a light pink. I'm going to add some sweeps on top. My red and white was pretty dry, so I just went back for more tap some on the paper towel. Same down here, a little bit of white, a little bit of red. Tap some off on your paper towel so you know it's like a nice light pink, and come up over your yellow. Again, kind of going that same motion that we had before. Going that way and going that way. And just have an area where the yellow and the pink overlap. And you can even have that curve over to this side as well. A good way to kind of make those work together a little bit better is adding a little bit of water to your brush, tapping it on the paper towel, and going over that blended area. And soften this up too. So I have my pink where my yellow and pink kind of meet, and then more of the yellow on its own, and same down here. So the yellow on its own where the pink and yellow blend, and then pink a little bit more on its own. Once you're done, you don't have to clean your brush. You can just kind of pat some off onto your paper towel. I'm going to go into that white paint, tap some off on my paper towel, kind of where the blend is. I'm just going to sweep a little bit of white on top. If it's still too wet, you can give it a moment to dry, but there is this kind of sweep of white running on top. And you do want the reflection down here to be doing the same thing. So you have a sweep of white. And I might go back a little bit later when my brush isn't so wet. And let's go ahead and add a little bit more light in this area too, so you can even add whatever is kind of left on your brush in this area. So I added white, tapped it on my paper towel, went over my blended area, then just kind of whatever excess or extra that was on my brush, it's gonna kind of sweep a little bit of that lightness on top of my yellow. Perfect. Your next step, you do not have to clean your brush. You are going into the purple and white. If you have a lot on there, you can kind of tap some off. But if you have just a little bit of your yellow, pink, and white on your big brush, not a problem. So again, I'm going to go into my purple and my white. And all the space above and below, I'm going to paint with purple and white. It's okay if it catches some of the pink. And I'm working in that same kind of motion. I'm going to work up from that line and just kind of work off the edge. So you're making kind of like almost like a rainbow shape over it. Don't worry about these corners just yet. So purple and white. Overlap over my yellow. Make sure it's nice and smooth from one side to the next. And go ahead and overlap over your pink a little bit too. You can add some water in just a moment. So I'm going to bring it up and over with my light purple. So a little bit of both. Let's create this really pretty lavender color. And again, you can overlap a little bit as well. You can always add some water to your brush, tap it on the paper towel, and where these two kind of meet, the purple and pink, you can just kind of sweep a little bit of water on top and make the two kind of work together a little bit better. Again, be sure you have nice long lines, because if you stop in the middle of kind of like that rainbow shape, you want to keep it going so you don't see that stop movement with your brush. Go a little bit more round right there. All right, and same on the bottom area. A little bit of purple, a little bit of white. Gonna come out from here. Don't worry about the corners. And then I'm moving in that same motion. Purple and white. I want to fill it all in. I'll overlap over that pink line in just a moment. I want to kind of work off the edges. I'm going to go over that yellow line. Overlap it just a little bit with purple and white. Just a tiny bit so they have that blending point, and I'll add water in just a moment. Bring it over to the sides, overlapping over that pink. I'll just kind of bring it down over to the bottom too. And again, you can use water on your brush to help the light purple and the pink work together a little bit better. I'm going to add a little bit more white to my brush. Tap it on the paper towel. Just going to come in a little bit lighter on my blend. It's not so harsh where the pink and purple meet. So I just added a little bit of white, tap some off on my paper towel. White, tap, kind of go over it. And again, you can use your water, tap some off on your paper towel, and then go over it to help your pinks and purples blend together a little bit better. Water is going to help a lot, so if you feel like it's not blending well, just add a little bit of water to your brush and go over it with nice long smooth lines. Perfect. Once you are done, you don't have to clean your brush. You're just going to go right into your purple, and the edges are going to be your darkest point. So we're pretty much going to go from our light to our dark. So this area is just going to be purple on your brush. It's okay if you're still catching some of that white that you had, but you will be overlapping over your lighter area as well. I'm gonna kind of turn this off a little bit more and curve it just a little bit more. I'm gonna create this top part as a little bit of a darker. So I'll start off this edge, maybe come down a little bit, then curve it a little bit more this way. I'm gonna wait for that to dry a little bit too, so I can build another coat on top. Also, with that line that we made earlier with the yellow, you can have it turn over with your purple and just kind of paint side to side for all of that purple paint. And then you'll even be painting the top part purple in just a moment, where there's still more white space. So from here to here, I still have more white space. I'm just gonna go back into my purple. Don't worry about any white on there because this is gonna be your darkest area. Overlap over your light purple a little bit. And I started off on my line right here at the end. And again, I curved and kind of created this darker area going up and over. So I do want to start up here and then go all the way to the side. I'll do the same on the bottom part. Just purple on my brush. If you caught too much white, you can always wipe it off on your paper towel. I'm gonna come down a little bit. Not overlap over the purple. No. Come out over here as well. This is just the reflection area, so make sure it's pretty similar to the top half. I'm gonna paint all the way to the corner. Again, you can use your water, tap on your paper towel, and go over where the purple and light purple meet. And be sure everything in that background is curvy. You don't want to have a straight line going all the way across. And I'll let that dry before I go back in there with another coat of purple to make it a little bit darker. So from here to here, I still have some white space. So I'm just gonna kind of follow through, come down with my purple. I'll give it another coat of purple in just a moment. And then now I'm gonna do the bottom half, just side to side. All right, I'll give it a couple minutes to dry. And then I'm just gonna work on my edges a little bit more with another coat of purple just to make it darker. And again, I'm working off that rainbow shape, kind of curve. Same with down here. Go down there and make that purple a little bit darker. If you want, you could even give it a third coat, but because you definitely want it to be from light to dark. Off the sides where it folds over, that kind of triangular area. Also paint the sides where that purple folds over. And before we do move on to laying everything on top, be sure you have this background down nice and neat. You can always go back and do another coat to clean it up. Just be aware of wet colors blending. So if you have a wet color and another wet color touches it, they're gonna blend together. I'm gonna go back and just touch up some areas that I still see some canvas poking through. Give this another coat of purple. I definitely want to cover up my canvas, so if I see any canvas poking through, I'm just going to go over it with another coat. But again, be sure you're going from dark to light, and all your line work is nice and curvy, or all your background is nice and curvy. So I'm just going to go back with my purples, especially because they're pretty thin on there. So I have my lightest purple, my medium, and my darkest. One is always overlapping over the other, so that it doesn't look like stripes. It looks more like a nice blend. You can use your water, tap on the paper towel, go over it to smooth it out. So let's just kind of touch up our paint before we overlap anything on top. Wipe some off. I think I'm gonna have a little bit more white. Just kind of working on this area, making sure it's going from a lighter purple to a darker purple. Going back to my lightest area, I just added more white. Sweep some. I can add some water, tap it on my paper towel. Just kind of go over that area. I feel like a second coat always helps just because it covers up the canvas. So again, I'm just going back with my purple, a little bit of white on my brush, and then a little bit more white. Because that purple is so thin, I definitely want a little bit more coverage on my canvas. All right, and in just one moment, we'll start building some land on top. But before you do, just be sure your background's nice and dry to where it's not so shiny. If you feel like your background is still really shiny, give it a couple minutes to dry. If you need 5 or 10 minutes, because if we start putting the land on top and it's still wet, then it'll just start blending in with our background. Once you're done, you can also wash and dry your brushes. I'm going to give mine a couple minutes to dry. And I'll start building on there. For our next step, we will be building some land. Our land's going to be in the middle of our canvas, and it's going to go to more yellow, more pink, more pinkish purple, and more of the dark purple on its own. And remember, this bottom half is the reflection, so whatever's happening on the top half, the bottom half will also be doing. And the land just comes up just a little bit. You want mostly sky to be visible. And we'll just be using our small brush for the next step. All right, you do not have to be done. Of course, you can always pause the video, but I'm gonna start showing you guys the next step. So the next step, I have a nice clean small brush with yellow paint. I'm gonna start on that line that I created before, and I'm just gonna come in a little bit with just yellow on my brush. I'm gonna come into the left about, let's say about an 1.5 inches to 2 inches, so not too much. And with the land, I'm just gonna come up a little bit and down, just up, and I am kind of jumping with my brush. So just gonna coming up and down, up and down, up and down. And I'll have the reflection down here, so up and down, up and down. Again, I'm just kind of jumping with my brush. And they do look like they are like mountain points, so I do want to make sure kind of a point to the top. And I'm going to add a little bit of white to my brush, tap it on my paper towel. It's going to go over it just a little bit because, again, this is the lightest area, so I definitely want it to be a nice light yellow. It's kind of jumping over that area too. And you don't have to clean your brush when you're done. So just like a nice mountainy area. Whenever you are ready, you can, you don't even have to clean your brush, you can just wipe some off on your paper towel. I'm gonna go into white and a dot of red and just maybe bounce some off onto your paper towel so that you see that it's a nice pink. And then I'm gonna start making the land on top, and then I'll make the reflection in just a moment. I'm gonna overlap a little bit over my previous kind of land area. Come up and down, come up and down, come up and down. I'm gonna stop about 1 inch or so before it starts going into that lightest kind of purple area. So give them a good amount of space. And I'm just kind of jumping up and down with my brush, creating these kind of points. And then I'm gonna come down and do my best to do a reflection of them. It doesn't have to be perfect. I'm gonna kind of follow the shape the best you can. And I am gonna overlap again on top of the yellow, so I have that kind of blending area. I'll stop before I get into these two. Again, be sure that the tops of those are nice and pointy. I'm gonna go back and maybe add a little bit of red and white to my brush. And be sure I have nice pointy mountain tops. Again, I'm just bouncing with my brush. And I'll overlap over that yellow one just a little bit, that yellow area, just a little bit. Perfect. You don't have to clean your brush because we're going to be going into purple and pink in just a moment. Clean off those edges just a little bit. All right. Once you're done, you don't have to clean your brush. You're going to go into the purple and white. So purple and white. Pat some off onto your paper towel so you can kind of make sure it's a nice kind of lavendery purple. I'm going to overlap over my pink area just a little bit. Start making the land. And then I'll just start adding some more purple to my brush. So I go into kind of like the darker area. So purple, maybe tap some off on your paper towel. And then I'm gonna go all the way to the edge of your canvas while adding more and more purple. I might let that just dry a little bit. Make sure the tips are just a little bit more clean. Just gonna go in there and just give them a little bit of a point here. Mountain. Right. And I'll start doing the reflection. Go on top of that pink one just a little bit more. Maybe add some water to it so that pink and purple blend together a little bit better. I'll let that dry for a moment, and I'm going to go back and kind of clean up that area, but I want to make sure I have a nice gradual from yellow to pink to light purple to the darker purple. There's always that blending area where the next color kind of blends into the next color. Again, be sure that the tops of your mountainside are nice and clean. You can just kind of go on top of them and sweep it. Clean up that area. Make sure it's nice and filled in. Too much white on there. I give that a moment to dry, and then I'm going to start from here, and I'll go back and kind of touch everything up, give it a second coat. Have that blended more. All right, so after I kind of laid out my yellow, my pink, my light purple, my dark purple, I'm going to go back, just kind of smooth everything out just a little bit more. So white, yellow, tap some off onto your paper towel. You don't want it to be too yellow. You want it a nice light yellow. I'm just gonna go in here and just kind of smooth out the tops of my mountain. A lot of times the mountains are nice and wide, so you can just kind of go off to the left, to the right. Make sure they're creating a nice wide line. Perfect. I'm gonna go into the pink a little bit with my yellow. And then I'm gonna have some white and pink. I didn't even clean my brush in the water. A little bit more red. So now yellow and pink. And again, you can have your blending area with the two. And those mountain areas are kind of nice and wide. I'm gonna go in there and overlap over the yellow a little bit. Over the pink a little bit with your kind of lavender. Make sure everything looks nice and smooth. Just gonna jump in with my brush, but making sure the edges are a little bit cleaner. I'm gonna go into a little bit of purple and a little bit of white. And with my purple and white, I definitely want to overlap over my pink a little bit. And have it kind of go from its own. And I can just wipe off my brush a little bit more. And then go into my darkest purple area. Just kind of widening these mountains a little bit more, making sure that they don't all look exactly the same. Some are higher, some are lower. Overlapping over my lighter purple too. Going there just a little bit. I might want to wait for this to dry and go back to it just a little bit more in just a moment. I'll be adding some white light to it as well to kind of show where the light from the sky is lightening it up, but it's still too wet. Go kind of overlap a little bit more over here. Get a nice gradual change from from light to dark or dark to light. do want to go back to more of my pink as well. Kind of get my pink a little bit brighter. I'm gonna go in here. A little more red, maybe. Get that pink paint just a little bit more brighter. Mostly on the left side right before it hits that lavender color. Just adding a little bit of that brighter pink on top of this lavender, so create some nice light on there too. I'm just kind of going side to side. Go back to that purple right here. Get a little bit darker. This might just need some more drying time, so I can make it a little bit darker. But once you are done, you can just kind of mess with this for a moment, and it does definitely take a while to kind of have it go from light to dark. Again, just be sure you're going back and getting the nice clean tops of your mountains, so you can always just kind of drag your brush on the top area. Make sure you have nice pointy mountains, and maybe some that are just a little bit lower and a little bit more round as well. So be sure you have a nice combination of both. Be sure you go back and do a second coat so you can see it a little bit better after you laid it out. And again, that gradual from dark to light. And then once you are done, you can let that dry for a little bit. Wash and dry your small brush. And then I'm going to go in there with just white and kind of sweep where the reflection stops. And our yellow line that we first created kind of was. So white paint, I tapped it on my paper towel. And then I'm gonna go kind of like where that yellow line was before, but I'm just kind of sweeping, barely pushing on my brush, leaving some space between each sweep. So pretty much where my yellow line was, I'm just gonna lightly sweep so I know where the reflection starts. You can even go in there and just gonna add some light sweeps a little bit further down from your brush, or from your reflection line with your brush. The water is, it's okay if some of the other colors got on your brush. You can always wipe it off on your paper towel. But underneath my line that I created, where my yellow was before, I go in there and just add some sweeps, barely pushing on the side of my small brush. I'm gonna definitely add them underneath that line. If you want, you could maybe add a little bit of light on top of your mountains on top. A little bit here and there, but mostly underneath that line. Perfect. Okay, and we'll let that kind of dry for a bit. We are gonna build some land down here. So we'll be building some land down here. I'm gonna wash and dry my brush before I start it. And I'm gonna start with some pink and then go into my purples. So I'm gonna start with some red, so a good amount of red, good amount of white, and you can kind of see it a a little bit better on your plate or your paper towel. I want it to be a nice bright pink, so don't get it too dull. So you want a nice bright pink. And this is my line that I just made with my sweeps. I'm going to come down about this far. Come down with my brighter pink. So not going into your lavender as much, or too much, or too close, excuse me. I'm gonna come down a little bit. This is my land area. So I'm gonna come down just a little bit with my brighter pink. And then with my small brush, I can just kind of fill it in side to side. Don't worry about it folding over onto the right side of your canvas. So it's a nice bright pink. I came down just about so from my line that I created with the yellow. It came down and it's land, so I just kind of slowly moved my small brush and brought it to a point. And you don't have to wait for it to dry. You can just go into a little bit of purple and a little bit of white. Maybe just kind of get some off onto your paper, your wax paper or your paper towel. I'm gonna overlap a little bit over my bright pink. And I'm gonna bring it down a little bit as well. And then I can go inside that space and paint it completely with this lavender. And where the pink and purple kind of meet, I'm gonna add water to my brush, tap it on my paper towel, and use my water to kind of help those blend together a little bit better. And I'm just kind of sweeping, flicking my brush side to side. So just gonna use a little bit of water to help that pink and light purple blend. And you don't have to wash your brush, but once you're done with that light pink, or excuse me, that bright pink and the light purple area, you can kind of just wipe off your brush on your paper towel. I'm gonna go into my purple. Just gonna wipe some off. And I'm gonna start making sweeps coming down of the reflections of the trees I'm gonna make later. So let me show you how. So just purple, tap some off. I'm just gonna come down and just make some sweeps. This one's gonna be a taller tree. I have kind of like a little bit of a tree that comes up, and I'm sweeping, so I want to get those flick kind of movements with my brush. And I come over, there's another one that's about the same height, maybe just a little bit taller. So again, I'm just kind of sweeping with my brush, coming over, making a mini. Getting smaller and smaller with my sweeps here. So I'm coming down pretty far. Bring your sweeps to a nice point for the top part of your tree. Going over just a little bit, coming up, going over, coming down on there, over, coming down. All the way to the end, just getting smaller and smaller. And to kind of clean this line up where the two meet, I am just going to go side to side over it with whatever purple's on my brush, and you can even go into that lighter purple with some sweeps as well. If you wanted to go back and give that a second coat, you absolutely can, so it's a little bit more solid, maybe a little bit darker too. Coming down, and back up, coming down. Give those flicks with your brush to create those feathery ends. And we'll let that dry for a bit. Now that this area is dry, I think I'm gonna add a little bit more dark purple on the tops of my mountains. All right, once you are done, you are gonna start with your 2 large trees. So we'll let this area dry a little bit more, but we're gonna build 2 large trees. We're gonna start off with black, then purple, then white on our brush. So we're gonna go from dark to light. I'll show you how. Be sure your background is nice and dry again. Be sure it's not shiny and wet. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use my small brush, wipe it off, make sure it's nice and clean. My black paint, tap some off on my paper towel so I don't have too much on there. So small brush, black paint. I'm gonna come off a little bit from the edge. I'm just gonna make a line to build the height of my first tree. It doesn't have to be perfectly straight. So we build some on top, so just a little bit over from the side. And then I'm gonna build a second line for my second tree. So a good amount of distance, but still kind of working that purplish, maybe purplish pink area. But you want to give it a good amount of room to build out as well. This one's definitely shorter. It's going to be about that tall. So I have my 2 lines. This one is kind of where the lavender and purple, medium purple meet. Once you're done with those 2 lines, you're just going to go back to your small brush and you're just going to be going back and forth, almost like a zigzag. And as you get higher and higher into your tree, you'll be wanting to make shorter and shorter zigzags because of course it's going to be a triangular shape. And you do want most of this area to be filled in as well. So again, I'm just jumping side to side with my small brush. It's black, maybe tap some off on your paper towel. Go back and fill it in a little bit more. You're just kind of zigzagging back and forth. I'm gonna go further out down here. Go in there and fill it in a little bit more. I'll do the other tree in just a moment with black. So I'll do all the black first, all the purple second, and then all the white third. I'm just kind of going side to side with my small brush. So there's that first tree. Still have some peaks of purple and pink and yellow behind it. Same idea for this one. And it's okay if it kind of overlaps a little bit here or there. I'm just gonna zigzag and I'm gonna get shorter and shorter. With my zigzags. About this point right here, you start seeing more open space between the two. So let me show you what I'm talking about. So as I'm coming up from here, I'm seeing that separation between the 2 trees right there to where they don't mesh into each other or work into each other. And again, I'm just jumping back and forth with my small brush in a zigzag formation all the way to the top. Go ahead and fill this part in. And again, I have some purples peeking, pinks, purples, and yellows peeking through. Perfect. You can wash and dry your brush. Maybe give that a minute or 2 to dry so it doesn't mix in with your purple too much. But once you are done, you can, again, give this a couple minutes to dry. Wash and dry your brush. Go into your purple. Maybe tap some off on your paper towel. And you're going to be following that same kind of zigzaggy idea. Probably not as much because black is mostly what your trees are going to be. So again, you can go in there with purple, zigzag back and forth. Make sure you have a nice point to the top of your trees. And down here, zigzag back and forth. And then maybe give your purple a minute to dry. And then you'll go in there with your white. Be sure to wash and dry your small brush. And it's that same idea of just jumping back and forth. So giving this a minute or two to dry. It doesn't have to be completely dry, but a little bit of white on my small brush. Tap it on my paper towel. And I'm just going to go in there and just kind of barely push here and there. You definitely don't want as much white. You still want to see some of the black kind of peeking through. I'm just kind of going in there and creating some layers of snow sitting on top of the trees. You don't have to zigzag, but you definitely want to go back and forth. And again, I'm just kind of pushing with my brush. If you feel like it's blending in too much with your black and purple, give it a little bit more time to dry. Just kind of going in there and finding some spots and laying some snow on top. And you can add as much snow as you like. White, tap it on your paper towel and just kind of go back and forth, fill in that space. You want them a little bit more scattered. You don't want them all to be lined up perfectly. And again, you can add as much snow as you like to your trees. Just kind of pushing up and down, very scattered. And again, if your white is not bright enough, give it some time to dry and then you can go in there and give it another coat of white here and there. Perfect. Let's see if a big splotch of white down here. Once you're done with that, again, take your time. You can go back and forth between black, purple, and white if you like. But I'm gonna move on to the trees that are sitting here. So I'm gonna wash and dry my small brush really well. This is the same idea that we just kind of did over here, but it's just with our light purple and our light pink. So I'm going to wash and dry my small brush. And again, if you're still working on this area, take your time, pause the video if you need to. I'm going to start with a little bit of purple and a little bit of white on my brush, making sure it's a nice lavender color. I'm going to build my trees first. Pat some off of it. So there's a shorter tree right here. I'm going to work in that pink purple area. Don't go too far up. You want a good distance. And then a little bit off to the right. I'm going to get a little bit taller and go a little bit past that line. Come up a little bit with the next one, and then get a little bit higher. And come down a little bit, the next one off, a little bit off from the edge. And this is your highest, or your tallest tree. And again, I'm gonna zigzag back and forth, mostly covering it up with this lavender color. Make sure the bottom parts are thicker and you get thinner and thinner as you work your way up. It's a nice little point on top. And I'm going to continue to do the same thing with the other trees. And I'll go in there and add white. So a nice lighter purple. You can always make some more if you need to. Bottom. You're getting thinner and thinner as you get to the top. Let's go back and fill it in a little bit more. Zigzag back and forth. There's this one. We'll go in there and paint pink in just a moment. Once you're done, you can wash and dry your small brush. Get a nice pink on there, pretty close to the pink that's maybe in the land in the background. So a little bit of, I need to wash my brush a little bit more. A little bit of red, a little bit of white. Get a little bit lighter. You can go in there, maybe pat some off so you don't have too much on there. Just gonna fill it in with just a little bit of pink here and there. Again, that's kind of same zigzaggy motion. If you added too much pink on there, you can always go back to your purple. I feel like I might go back to my purple a little bit. But again, I'm just kind of adding a little bit of pink on top. This is almost kind of gives it like a snowy feel with this pink color. So I'm just kind of going in there and randomly adding a little bit of pink, just kind of jumping with my brush. And if you feel like you put too much pink on there, you can go back to your purple once the pink dries a little bit more. Here you go. Again, there is one more step, which is adding some white in our water, some white snow, some white snowflakes as well. And if you are still working on this part, you're welcome to push pause. But the first thing I'm going to do is take the back of my small brush, and dip it into a nice clean area of white paint. Make sure it's not dripping. And in my sky, and then in the reflection, I'm just going to be making dots for the snow. And the harder you push, the bigger the dots become. So be sure you have a nice variety of snow. I just happen to have pink on my brush, so back of my brush. So let me go back and find a nicer, cleaner white. And again, I'm using the back of my brush almost like a stamp. And the reflections don't have to be perfect. You know, along with your snow, but if you want to, you can always reflect it pretty similarly to the top part of your sky. But again, you don't have to. It could be just more scattered. You can add as much snow as you like. So there's my falling snow. I'm going to flip back to the regular side. You can wipe off the back. Flip back to the regular side with my small brush. I'm going to add a little bit of white, like a nice clean white. Tap some off on your paper towel or onto your wax paper. I'm going to do some sweeps of light on the water. So just barely pushing on my brush. Be very careful of your snowflakes. Just going to go in there and just add some sweeps. Some shorter ones, working with some longer ones, but I'm just barely on the tippy toes of my brush. So there's that. If you want your white to be brighter, you can always go back and give it a second coat. Again, you can add as much white to your water as you like. There's a little bit of a wiggle to my brush too, I've noticed. Just a tiny bit. All right. Last but not least, there are snowflakes. You would definitely want to use your small brush. And again, remember, the harder you push, the thicker the line becomes. And you can add as many snowflakes as you like. We're just going to show you guys some basic shapes. I like to bring my brush to a point to make sure. Nice lines. So a little bit of white. I'm just going to make some scattered about. I'm going to make one down here. Make an X shape. I'm going to go right down the middle. And I'm just going to put some white. I think my brush is a little bit too thick for this. I've been using my brush a lot all day. It's kind of harder to see too. But just nice basic shapes with your small brush. I'll make another one up here that's probably easier to see. So the same idea as this one. Make an X shape. And then make one that kind of just splits it in the middle. And then I'm going to go in and just kind of make a V at the end of these. Again, my brush has been used a lot, so it's a little bit more worn than yours is. Kind of make that shape in there. This seems kind of intimidating. You are welcome to do without snowflakes. I feel like I might have done without because my brush is just a little bit thicker than I want it to be. But they're really pretty. All right, there's a big one over here. Same shape. You want the big X. I'm barely pushing on my brush. I'm going to come down the middle. And kind of like two Y shapes. Two V shapes on each one. I think I'm going to do another one down here. make an X shape. I'm going to split it in half. This one needs to be thinned out a little bit more. It's pretty much the same shape over and over again. Sorry, we're not going to work on this one. Okay. And then it's kind of like that V shape again. All the way around. Then you can put a circle in the middle. You can add as many of these as you want. You can add as little as you want. Be very gentle on your brush. If you're looking at this and you're like, oh, this does not go very well with the picture for me, then you do not have to do it. Just gonna go on there so you guys can see it a little bit better. I'm gonna fix this one up a little bit too. There we go. Once you're done adding as many snowflakes as you'd like, you are all done with your beautiful painting. Don't feel bad if you need to go back and touch anything up. Just be aware that if you have a wet color and another wet color touches it, they are going to mix and blend. But otherwise, you have your beautiful painting. Thank you so much, artists, for joining us, and I hope you have a beautiful day.